Yo, mate, how
Hey,
are you?
mate.
Hey,
Good,
big
mate. How are you?
man. Yeah,
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 good to see
good
you,
man.
dude.
And
Good to
you,
see
mate,
you.
I'm really.
There we go. This will work. Yeah, I'm
Where
sitting in
are
my
you?
car at the moment. About to go on to an appointment. So yeah, just
Lurking,
sitting in the car
lurking,
at the moment.
lurking in the shadows.
Yeah, mate. That's it. That's what I do best. You know, I look in shadows, do
Love
creepy
it.
shit, and yeah,
Uh,
yeah, mate.
mate,
Yeah,
you've
it's
probably,
good to see you.
you've probably seen the stuff we've been doing on Mondays.
I
So
have been, man.
it's
You're doing
10
fantastic.
minute, 10-minute Mondays, mate. We're just cutting the fat on mental health. I feel like a lot of
Beautiful.
people that, they take a lot of time with talking about it, which it needs that time, but people have such short attention spans
Mm,
now. So just going to get straight into it, mate.
beautiful. Let's do it.
Tell everyone a little bit about you, like where you're from, your
I will.
background, where you were educated, what career you had before you went on this journey.
Do you want to take up the whole 10 minutes right now or?
As
Yeah.
short as you can. As short as you can.
Yeah. So from New Zealand, back in New Zealand, I met this beautiful, handsome man that you see before yourself, not me, this guy.
Where is he? Where is he? Where is
Yeah,
he?
yeah, yeah, I got no idea, mate. That dashing smile doesn't lie. In Bali, so that's why I lived there for just a little over 12 months, and I'm an anxiety coach. So long story short, started in the fitness industry, came over to mental health. Why? Simply because I noticed the mental shifts that people made were so much more rewarding than the physical shifts. And
Mm,
also for myself, my own journey through anxiety was an experience trying psychologists, counselors, therapists. None of it really worked.
mm,
It was helpful, but it didn't shift how I felt. So
mm.
I got into mindfulness, got a coach, worked with a few people here and there, and eventually found a solid coach. And since then, I've been working deep in mindfulness. I'm studying neurology at the moment and really navigating through what anxiety is and how it's created and how to reverse engineer it. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
amazing. I can remember when we were sat in a restaurant in Bali and we were both absolutely
Mm.
skint and we just both got there and we were like, we were going through this amazing shift, weren't we? We were just like, our lives were just thrown about everywhere. It was an amazing
Yeah,
memory to
man.
say where we are now. So it's
Oh, it's
amazing. Like,
incredible, dude.
so for you, like, can you give like, you probably had maybe a few times in your life where you struggle with mental health a little bit. Maybe what was the main struggle for you? The main one that came up that you think people can maybe relate to the most who was watching this?
Yeah, yeah, man. So loneliness was a big one for me. It's probably the main one, honestly.
Okay.
Jealousy was also a big one that came in there as well. So jealousy
Jealousy.
is an easier one to touch on.
Mm.
So
Yeah, yeah.
just I'll start with that, then I'll go to loneliness because it's more
Yeah, yeah.
extensive. Jealousy came through romantic relationships, big time.
Mm.
So even if I just simply liked someone, I found that I'd find this massive sense of friction whenever that person wouldn't show the sort of experience or the sort of love that I was craving in the way that I wanted it as well. So
Mm.
because it didn't match my specific desire, I wasn't worthy, right? So that's what I created in my mind. So jealousy became a very big thing whenever they'd show the things that I wanted to receive to other people, even though
Yeah.
if they were just sort of subtle things. They also came through on also with friends as well. If friends started to become successful and I wasn't, I'd feel jealous. So this was
Mm.
definitely stemming a lot from this own lack of self-worth, this own lack of self-love. I know you speak on self-love a lot, which is beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and then loneliness actually came. It's been around for honestly ever since I can remember. It's something that is it's a very interesting experience because I always thought that I needed to have the right people around me in order to not feel lonely. But all I needed to do was to fix this guy,
Mm.
sort this guy out,
Yeah,
and I'll no
be
longer feel
comfortable with
lonely.
yourself in your own company, I guess. Yeah, yeah.
That's just it,
100%.
man. Yeah. So really learning to find what it meant to enjoy my own company, as Sadhguru says. I love his quote. Says, "If you're lonely and you're alone, it means you're in bad company." I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
that one. That
That's
is
nice. That's
literally
very nice.
brilliant. That's just it. I was in bad
Mm.
company, so I had to really shift that. And how to do that was to not go that way, but to go this way. Yeah,
Mm.
go inward.
Going on jealousy, I'm fascinated with jealousy, but I feel like
Mm,
in the in the modern world that we live in, we're just constantly comparing ourselves, constant comparisons with everyone. I think it's probably one of the worst things we can probably do is compare our lives with other people. We should only focus on your own life, standing back to self love and just being compassionate for yourself. Yeah, that person's there, and I'm so happy for them. I'm so happy that person's there, but I'm here, and that's okay
yeah.
too. You know.
Totally, totally.
Um,
What I've definitely learned as well is the mind does something interesting. The more that I judge that person, That's firstly, the first point is that's a direct reflection of exactly what I'm judging myself about, right? So that's always a good
Mirrors.
way to look at it. Yeah, absolutely. The second factor I noticed is that the more I started judging that person, the more I'd actually create a thought in my mind, I don't want that. So I'd create a subconscious thought in my mind, I don't want that. Therefore, I'd actually struggle to gain that, which is very
Mm,
interesting. Um, I found it a lot easier actually to, first of all, I'd stop fearing being judged when I judged less. That was one thing. And
yeah.
second, as well, I started to achieve more things that I wanted simply because I stopped judging people that had those things.
Mm,
So it was a really interesting concept. I mean, it's a very mental game. You can call it spiritual, but there's definitely a lot of understanding around the subconscious that goes on as well. When I say
no, yeah.
I'm judging that, therefore I don't want that. That's what sort of goes on. So,
Mm,
yeah, it's definitely a conscious process. However, it's also looking at as to, of course, where it's coming from. Like you said, right, the mirrors, and it's such a beautiful concept to understand, right? Okay, well, if I'm judging that person about that they're really muscly, right? Like, oh man, he's on roids or whatever,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
probably
yeah, yeah.
because I don't think
Standard boy
it's
thing.
because I
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
be muscly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no,
Or if I'm
100%.
judging, yeah. Oh, thank you. I appreciate the comment about the accent. And if I'm
She's
judging,
she's talking about mine, I think, mate.
oh,
Definitely not talking
yeah,
about
all right, yeah,
definitely not talking
yeah,
about mine.
probably yours, mate. Mate, I'm not gonna
Definitely not
lie, I
mine.
love your accent.
Definitely not
Definitely
my
love your
accent,
accent.
mate. Definitely not
So
mine.
is the mine.
Yeah,
So
so that's amazing. And so jealousy was a big part, loneliness, and then as I said, mate, we've only got about 4 minutes left. So I really want to get on to one tip or
yeah,
one
of
bit of
course.
advice. I know it's such a big subject just to give one tip or one bit of advice, but anyone watching this who may be struggling with jealousy can't go through life
Yeah,
without judging someone. It feels
yeah,
very
yeah.
lonely. What bit of advice would you give to them to really get out of that rut and be the catalyst for change, really?
The first phrase that comes to mind is self-stability. And I don't mean by creating external stability, I mean internal stability. And internal stability comes from this ability. So there's two ways to go about it.
Yeah,
Taking away the negatives and enhancing the positives. So what I mean by that is the negatives that are pulling my energy, right? So pulling my emotion in some shape or form. So an example of a negative that might be pulling me could be a toxic friend, could be a toxic conversation, right? It could be a specific person at work. It might be a specific task that I'm spending so much time on that I don't really need to do.
mm,
So really looking into those negatives and decreasing those negatives, right? I mean, it's very simple, but actually going about it in a practical way. Okay, so that's of course a key one, and going about it internally as well. So whenever I say experience jealousy, this is a really good one to do is to actually sit with the sting. So when I feel
mm,
the jealousy, can I sit with the sting? So what happens normally is the reaction to that jealousy is stop feeling jealous.
yeah,
Every time I do that, what actually happens is my mind starts to grip it tight.
mm,
And then that actually becomes enhanced. If I say spend the next 10 seconds and don't think about green monkeys holding banana, what do you think about?
yeah,
Right. So the
mm,
more I tell myself not to be jealous, my brain actually works in ways that it starts to think about what I don't want it to think about. So saying don't feel jealous to myself, stop that, right? Actually enhances the jealousy, actually amplifies it. And rejection of emotion that is shown to actually enhance inflammation. And inflammation is a key biomarker to anxiety and depression. So it actually enhances my lesser emotions, which isn't what I want. So rather than suppressing
mm,
emotion, I want to actually, yes, actually allow it and be kind to myself about it. Like, okay, it's okay to be jealous. It's
yeah.
actually okay. And telling myself that and reassuring myself that. Now, what can I do about it? But first, I must catch it lightly and be kind to myself. Then I can start to shift it.
So
So,
would you say just basically just complete compassion? If you're feeling that, feel into it. I know I used. Sorry, I know we're out of time here, but I know
mm,
I used to be one. If I was, if I had a girlfriend, I walked into a bar or a club, and someone just started talking to her, I just get insanely jealous. I'm like, why am I
yeah,
getting jealous? Like, I'm a confident
totally.
guy, but it was because I was very deeply to the root of me
Mm,
insecure. I didn't know how to deal with that jealousy, and I think it was you who told me just be aware of it and send it love. Just send it, just give it love, and
yeah.
just take it for what it is. I think it comes down to trust as well, especially going into relationships. Sorry,
Mm,
having complete trust to that partner that when the jealousy
yeah.
comes up, it's just you can just laugh it off a little bit.
Totally. And that comes from the trust that I have with myself, right? And that's what I
Yeah,
mean by
yeah.
self-stability. Is the more stable I feel about myself, the more secure I also will be able to see other people. At
Yeah.
the end of the day, the limit that I can see other people's potential is the limit that I'm able to actually prove to myself in some shape or form. So definitely always coming back to this one if I'm looking at that one and worried about
Yeah.
it, because that's where the answer is.
Yeah.
The other side to it is just because I know we're short on time,
Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
positives and how to look into positives and enhancing. It's very simple, actually celebrating your wins. So a very interesting thing that happens in the brain, there's actually an area in the brain called the habenula back in the brain, and it actually produces a lot of dopamine. So when I celebrate something, what actually happens is my brain saying, oh yes, do more of that. So if I, for example, decide that I want to work on my presence, if I want to step into more productivity, if I want to learn to be healthy, every time I eat healthy food, every time I learn to be more present, every time I do 5 minutes of work, or do an extra paragraph on that blog, or do this Instagram live, right? I celebrate it. It's like, yes, great job, internal celebration. Actually, what happens is that dopamine circuit starts to fire. I become more productive. I'm more capable of stepping into that higher emotional state, because dopamine's the happy hormone. And also, my brain now starts to seek that more often and less of whatever else I was trying to not do so much of. Right. So
Yeah.
celebrating
Yeah.
is honestly such a powerful thing. Just simple celebrations constantly throughout the day actually has a very powerful effect.
100%, and I think that's what I know from my perspective, that I definitely don't do a lot enough of, and I know a lot of people don't do enough of celebrating the wins,
Totally.
and probably being too critical. Legend, thank you so
Yeah.
much, Kieran.
Thank you, man.
I
Yeah.
miss
Thanks for
you,
having me.
brother. I
Miss you
miss
too,
you.
brother. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
hopefully I'll see you in Bali or whatever. If anyone wants to follow
Yeah.
Kieran or get in touch with him or needs any advice, I'm sure he's open to that. I'll tag him in this video. Thanks again, brother.
Awesome. Thanks, brother.
Love you.
Love
Look
you,
after
man.
yourself. Bye,
Cheers.
mate. Bye,
Yeah,
mate.
we'll do, man. Bye.